Hi, you guys. Welcome. Okay, so this is an intro for something we recorded yesterday. So if you like our outfits, don't get too comfortable because we're going to do a quick outfit change.
Yeah, it's about to change.
But this podcast you're about to listen to or watch is so good. And like at the end, she was like, we should do this again. And I really am like, yes, please. Can we do this again? This was so good. So this is our intro that we're recording after having already recorded the conversation. And the person that we're speaking to, I'll let you introduce her because you work with her one-on-one. But it was really good. And I'm really excited for you to hear this.
Me too. I'm Layne, Deyling, Cherland, and this is Jessica Hover. You're listening to Very Good Enough, a podcast from Very Good Mothers Club. And this is our interview with Dr. Sam Rader. Sam is somebody that I work part-time for her company. So I met her just like picking up some side work as like personal assistant plus whatever, and got really into or was like sort of folded into the kind of work that she does in a very kind of a surprise way. And she's like become a person who is a huge resource for me. And her work is unique and different from anything else that I've experienced. She'll tell you a little bit more about this in the interview. But she was a psychologist for a very long time and then kind of developed her own healing modality that she feels has like expanded a little bit beyond what just psychology is in the treating of the mind. It's a lot more, there's like love involved, you know, when you're just getting mental health treatment, it has to be like pretty clinical. And for her work is based in like child development and her background in psychology, but it also has broadened to include.
Felt like it was like your energy, your essence, your spirit. It was like, I don't know, deep soulish type work.
Yeah. And a lot of love.
Yeah.
So it's something brand new and it's very exciting to be able to like be part of introducing something kind of new to the world. And I'm hoping that with these guest interviews, we can be able to give you guys like a really just broad view of lots of different kinds of cool people. And some of them will be like way over here in this way and some will be way over here in that way. And you guys can get to hear from like a lot of different voices and take a bunch in and chew on it and pull the parts that are for you. And then also get used to being like, actually that part was not for me and set that part aside, which is something that just like as a human person, I'm really learning how to do.
Yeah,
I think I've lived my whole life being like, either this person is right wholly or they're not. And I have to go find somebody who is right wholly. And I say that because Sam says a lot of fun things in this interview. And she even flags some spots of being like, this is my own finding. And it's a little controversial. So if it's for you, great. If it's not, that's okay. And so I just want to like also pitch that at the beginning of a season where we're introducing a lot of new people and a lot of new voices and saying like, these are conversations that we're having and there's going to be a lot from our experts that we agree with and then a little bit that we don't necessarily. And that's even like how we function. I feel like we've mostly showed everybody all the spaces where we're like perfectly aligned.
Sure.
But I'm excited to let this podcast sort of mature into a space where there gets to be just like a lot of ideas and we get to trust ourselves and trust you guys to take in what's for you and set aside what's not and just like keep enjoying the texture of that together.
And ultimately we're providing like a whole array of resources. So you're going to sometimes be like, I need that thing, whatever that is. And we want you to be able to have access to it. Dr. Sam, I went and like scoured her Instagram. There's so much just like juicy little nuggets of perspective and ways of viewing things. Really, really helpful stuff. And this, honestly, we recorded it yesterday morning, and in the evening, I was already laying on my children, which I can't wait till you get to that part. No, I was also like, somebody lay on me. So it'll all make sense soon.
So good.
Really, really great perspective. Her way of talking is just like, I don't know, kind of zen and like, you just want to keep listening. I could have kept going with this one for so long. It's great. And I'm lucky because I get to see you like applying her work to your life. And so, I'm excited for you to listen. I think you're really going to like it.
So we'll send you guys straight into the conversation and we'll see you in the outro.
Perfect.
Okay, so Sam, there are 100,000 things that we could talk about. We could talk for 10 hours. And I've like picked a handful, but if you could start by just telling people like your name and what you do, and then I'll ask you the things.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Sam Rader, and I go by Sam. You don't have to call me Dr. Sam. And I was a psychologist for 18 years. And I started developing a new approach that I originally thought was going to be, a part of the field of psychology. And then as the approach has continued to evolve over the last dozen years, it keeps revealing itself that, oh my gosh, this is not about the mind. This is not psychology. So I've left my psychology license behind. And this new field I've created is called source code. And it's an alternative to coaching and therapy. It's like a third way. And it's much more quantum and energetic and spiritual than psychology. It shifts things in the now, but it's rooted in the idea that in our first 5 years of life, our early experience sort of writes a source code deep inside of us that then determines how the rest of our story unfolds. So everything we experience, everything we feel, the ways we're treated, all sort of gets absorbed into us and becomes our story about ourselves and the world and how to relate. And then we just keep enacting and recreating our early experience. And some of that is beautiful and some of that's a little glitchy. And what I do is if there's sort of a glitch in the code that has us continually reliving painful patterns, I figured out there's really only 12 glitches in our code, which I call our coping styles. And I figured out how to help rewrite the code and liberate us from like lifelong pain. Sometimes pain we don't even know we're in because we haven't ever really tasted anything else.
Yeah, beautiful. So I thought that maybe the most direct way into our conversation would be to have you talk about, the idea of generational cycles gets brought up periodically when we ask people for questions or in conversations with the community. It's a word that's kind of out there, like a term that people use. And I almost feel like sometimes they use it in a way that's sort of like mythical and kind of scary, like, oh, it's this thing that we can't get past, or almost more like it's a curse, like generational curse.
Yeah.
And I think it's not that. And I feel that you have an explanation, like your work to me explains what that is in a way that's so practical, in the kind of like the puzzle pieces thing. And I was wondering if we could use that as sort of a portal in.
Yeah. Yeah. So to give a little backstory, my sense of things is that in our first 5 years of life, we're sort of hardwired to go through these certain developmental stages where we are integrating certain aspects of who we are. So for example, do I belong here on planet Earth? Is this the right fit? Or am I allowed to have a separate sense of self and be able to say no and still be in relationship? There's sort of 12 burning questions we are trying to answer about ourselves in our first 5 years of life. And if we get the kind of support we need from our family system during any of these stages, we're able to integrate. Yes, I am allowed to have a voice and say no. Yes, I do belong here, right? But if we don't get what we need at any of these stages, we have to adapt by adopting what I call a coping style. So if we don't feel understood, if we don't feel like it's a fit, if we don't feel like we belong, we become disconnected, the disconnected coping style. If we don't feel we're allowed to ever disagree or have a separate sense of self or use our voice, we develop what I call the symbiotic coping style. So just to give you a little bit of background on that. And then what ends up happening is that we take on these coping styles and they become our personality. And we think that's who we really are, but it's not who we really are. It's our early wounding from childhood. And then that's how we parent. When we grow up and we have our own kids, our coping styles get into everything that we do when we hold and touch and nurture our own children, because it's this like pattern we're stuck inside of. We don't know anything else. We don't know any other way to be. And so when we parent our children through our wounds, they either adopt our wounds too. If we're disconnected and we don't know how to connect with them, maybe they'll also become disconnected. Or we sort of raise them to be the puzzle piece that fits with our wounding. So for example, if we have that symbiotic coping style because we had a very domineering parent that didn't let us say no or be separate, we're now symbiotic. And so we're people pleasers, we're pushovers, we go with the flow. When we have little toddlers who are tyrants inherently, we let them push us around and we never say no and we never stop them and we're afraid to get mad at them. And so then they become little dictators. And they become the puzzle piece that fits with our wound. They become like our parents. So that's how I experienced generational pain being passed down. But the cool thing about source code in my system is that it's not a life sentence. Like I've found there's a simple, easy now way out of all of these patterns that can liberate ourselves and our children instantly from this generational pain.
It's like such a breath of fresh air. I love that so much. The thing that feels super potent to me, in that one of the many things that feels so potent, is the way that it takes blame out. It takes some of that feeling of like, oh no, I'm doing this bad thing to them, or oh, they did this bad thing to me. You have a lot to say about the sort of inherent innocence in it. Could you talk on that a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. I really do feel like everyone is innocent because our parents came by their coping styles innocently because of the way they were parented, and so on and so forth, generations back. Is these wounds have been passed down unconsciously, innocently, generation to generation, and we are all just reacting to each other's wounds. It's nobody's fault. And the beautiful thing is that under all this wounding and defense mechanisms and acting out, within all of us is this beautiful, loving essence that actually never gets corrupted by all this weird personality defense mechanism stuff that we're acting out every day. Under there is our true self, which is just love. And as soon as we dissolve the defenses or the coping styles, which is what source code is all about, we're all returned to our true essence of love, and our goodness just radiates out of us. And it's such a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. So the audience that we have is mostly people who have like pretty young children. It's pretty much babies and toddlers, or people who currently have babies and toddlers, even if there are maybe one or two olders. Would you share with us a little bit about some of those first woundings, if we could start kind of in that chronological space and just talk a little bit about like what the need is that is so easy to miss, but then also so easy to meet?
Yeah. I mean, I love that you said it's so easy to miss, because the reason why we keep passing down these coping styles is that as parents, we're not aware of these subtle developmental needs of children. The things I'm talking about, there's these 12 things. We've got to get it right. We don't know what those are. And I feel like that's one of the missions that I have on this planet, is to help educate parents of like, these are the very simple things that we need as young children. And when our kids get enough of that, and again, very good enough is like the coolest title of a podcast. Like, it tickles me endlessly to think about your podcast name. But we just need to do that good enough and have that attunement for them to get what they need and not have to develop defense mechanisms or coping styles. But yeah, so I mean, I'll be monologuing a long time if you want me to hit the first 6 coping styles, which is newborn, infancy, and toddler. But I'm happy to, if we really want to go there.
Let's start at the beginning and see
how about I'll add a little something. So I'm a parent. 2 of my kids fall in the category of 5 and under. And so naturally what I'm going to want is some like takeaways, like applicable things right now today. Because I think anyone listening to a parenting podcast is a parent who wants to do all of these things right. And like, so some of the questions in my mind is like, well, how do you separate what is personality from what is coping skills that are wrong? And like, how do you know when you're allowed to respond in frustration to a behavior from your toddler, or when that is actually like a coping skill coming out sideways, you know? And so anything that can be both like the big picture, here's what we're talking about, but then mom of toddler who's listening to this while making food that toddler's probably going to say they don't want anymore, even though they want right now. Like, what could she take right now today to help her in her process? And even if the bigger piece is like rewriting some of these things that we're carrying from our own backgrounds, anything like tangible, because the feedback we get is like, I listen to this while parenting. So like anything we give them, they are putting into practice in the moment. And then I too leave Layne's presence, run home and do the things. So anything we can take away.
Yeah. Okay. So this is I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to give you lots of juicy things today. And I want to explain that because there's 12 coping styles, and some of the coping styles even have many different subtypes. If you think about music, there's only 12 notes on a scale, but you can play infinite songs. So source code, even though it's incredibly simple on one hand, there's only 12 problems. It's also infinitely complex because it's like, okay, I, as the parent, have these 6 coping styles, because we all have several, by the way. It's not like astrology where you just have one. I have these 6 coping styles that are married together in this very significant way, which affects my parenting in this way. And my child is this age, which is dealing with these 2 coping styles. And I'm going to need to like, it's very complex in a way, but I'm going to give you my best ideas about this. And Layne, please feel free to weigh in as well.
Yeah.
But do you still want me to go chronologically, Layne?
I just want to kind of stick to this early zone.
Yes.
Just because there is so much, being like, okay, let's talk about the now. And that's where I feel like starting with the needs can feel really practical, because I'm like, oh, I can squeeze this baby closer.
Yes. Okay. Cool. So as newborns, there's 2 things that we're needing to integrate about ourselves. The first is that one I was talking about, of feeling understood, feeling like we belong, and feeling like it's the right fit. So the real burning question is, am I home? Did I make it to the right place? And the way that we know if we've made it home is if our inner world of needs and feelings and sensations is met in a coherent way by our outer world or our caregivers. And so if we're feeling squirmy because we're hot, we need them to sort of mind read and take our sweater off, not stick a boob in our mouth. And you guys probably know that's called attunement. That's called attunement, to be able to know when my baby's wiggling, it's because they're fucking hot, not because they're hungry. Now, that doesn't mean we need to get it right 100% of the time. Like, studies show that good enough parenting, we get it right 1/3 of the time. So great, but that attunement, that tuning in to our newborn's experience and what they might be needing and feeling, and trying to meet them where they are instead of trying to get them to fit into our picture or keep them on some kind of schedule or, just kind of space out and be disconnected from them. If we aren't able to attune to them, it ends up feeling like this awful mismatch feeling of like, no one understands me. No one gets me. I don't belong here. There's an itchy, scratchy mismatch of my insides don't match my outsides, and it's intolerable. And so the only recourse I have is to disconnect and feel like I am an alien. I don't belong on planet Earth, and there's 4 very different ways we can do that, but we probably don't want to get into the details of the subtypes. But yeah, so as a parent, actually at any age, so each of these coping styles gets formed at kind of like a critical period, but you can reparent at any age. If your child is 32 years old, you can start doing this work to reconnect, and it's still going to work. The shift can happen now. So it doesn't matter how old your children are. The second you shift your parenting, and actually the second you shift yourself, they will shift with you very, very simply and easily. I've seen this over and over again. But really what every child, what every person needs is for us to tune into their internal world and know that they are more than just their behaviors or what you can see on the outside. I mean, when you're seeing a certain behavior outside, that means there's something going on inside of them that needs some kind of acknowledgement or attunement. And so that tuning in is incredibly important for children of any age, so that they can feel connected, which is the antidote to disconnected. Feel connected to themselves, feel connected to us, and know that they can ask for what they need and get it and be understood, be met, instead of being missed. Are there any questions about that?
Oh, when you do that with your hands, it makes me want to cry every time. This is like my superpower. And I just can't listen to you talk about it without like having feelings.
Yeah. I just was thinking as you were talking, I got to kind of watch this happen with a new mom yesterday with her first baby. She brought her to our little like community meetup, and the baby was crying. And you could see that she wasn't sure what was going on. Like mom was trying to figure it out. And it's so cool for you to say all of this and then me to have this visual of like, she offered the boob. Oh, it wasn't the boob. She switched positions, wasn't switching positions. Another mom of twins was like, here, why don't I help? And so then they helped, didn't quite work. Then it was like, maybe baby's tired. So then I got to hold the baby and go to the dark spot in the place. And then baby fell right asleep. But it was all the mom who was kind of guiding that thing of, okay, try this, try that, maybe this, and then just kind of letting us be extra hands as we figured it out. But that's so beautiful to realize that that's not just a moment of getting your baby to sleep. That is doing something like soul deep and showing that baby has found its home.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
I actually have chills right now hearing you talk about that. And it's such a great example because the fact that you got it wrong 3 or 4 times is actually better than had you immediately gone to the dark spot and let the baby fall asleep. Because what actually develops our trust in relationship as a newborn is the rupture repair. Like you get it wrong, you get it wrong, you get it wrong, but you keep trying. And then I feel understood. And the reason why that builds the bond and that builds the trust is it's the same way that like when we go to the gym and we work out and we lift a weight, it's tearing our muscle fibers so that they rebuild stronger and create stronger bonds. And that's what builds our muscles, right? Same in a relationship. If you never go through a conflict, it's almost like false closeness. It's almost like sharing one mind. But if it's like, oh, I'm tired. And it's like, oh, want a boob? No, I didn't say I want a boob. I said I'm tired. Oh, do you want to be bounced? No. I want to be bounced. I want to. Oh, you're tired. Let me take you to this shade. You heard me and you kept trying and you believed me that wasn't it. And thank you for getting me. Oh, we're in it together where we can get through anything together. I can be understood. So it creates a resiliency, it creates a bond. And so that story of that infant is so beautiful and exactly what an infant needs. To get it wrong and then to get it right.
Yeah.
And it's what all of us need. And by the way, if as an adult, if as a parent, you're like, wait, I think I might be disconnected, like our sweet Layne, you know what you need to do? You need to be that baby that keeps crying until the other person gets it right. Because if we have the disconnected coping style, the second we're missed, we're like, forget about it. What's the point? I'm not going to try again because we don't know about the repair because we never got to repair. No one ever tuned in enough to ever get it right. So as soon as something felt wrong, we're like, all is lost. Forget it. Connection will never happen. And we just kind of just want to push off, right? And so we have to be. Does that go on between you two?
I get it. The all is lost is just very.
I love that.
It's over now.
Actually, what's funny too is hearing you talk, Sam. I feel like I can so see the way that you have like rubbed off on this woman because you have such a way of communicating very similarly. And a lot of your ideas, I can just see the color you've painted upon the canvas.
Well, I really, that's very flattering, but I think Layne and I just came together very aligned.
Yeah.
I think we already kind of shared a language by the time we'd met. Layne already came Layne when I met Layne.
Yes.
Just more Layne now.
More Layne.
That's my goal with Source Code is just to help people become more of who they really are.
Yeah.
But that's just one of the 12.
Yeah.
I want to keep going, but I also want to flag, you said a third of the time is good enough. And I just want to do a little math on that because that's 3 in 10. That means you can not get there. How many is left? 7 times. 7 out of 10. Like that's a lot. Like, or it's a lot of you can not hit the nail on the head, and just a little bit of like, okay, we did it, perfect, and that's plenty.
Yeah, and in fact, if we have certain coping styles that are where we're hyper attuned to our children, maybe we have one of the subtypes of disconnected, which I call masked, which I have and Layne has, where if no one was going to attune to us, we figured out how to get hyper developed mirror neurons and attune to others to sort of get the loop of communication going. So if we're mass disconnected, or if we're symbiotic, or if we're premature, and we're hyper attuning, over attuning, and we're getting it right 10 out of 10 times or 9 out of 10 times, that's not so good. Because then our child will kind of be indulged, which is another one of the coping styles. And or omnipotent, where they don't know how to tolerate frustration or discomfort, because anytime they fuss even the littlest bit, we're like, oh, perfect, precise aim. We know exactly what you need. Boom. You don't ever have to feel that discomfort. You don't ever have to wait to get to the good feeling. And then lo and behold, as they grow up, life is not like that. We've set an unrealistic expectation for their nervous systems, and they either have the omnipotent coping style, which is, that inability to tolerate frustration, or the indulged coping style, which is I want what I want when I want it, and I'm entitled to it, and I have absolutely no, willingness to not get what I want. And so I think the 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10 is probably the right idea. Like, we don't want to just totally miss them, but we also don't want to get it perfectly right away every time. It really can create like a little tyrant, a little dictator in our children when we do that. So we're still at newborn, y'all. Although, like I said, all of that stuff applies to any age, but that's the burning question of newborn. The other burning question of newborn is, do I exist as a fact? So you guys have probably talked on the show about object permanence, or have you not?
Really?
No. Well, I don't know if you're going to do a video of this, but it's like, here's my phone. Is it still here? Does it still exist when it's off camera? Right. And before a certain age, we don't know that it does. Like, if you hide a toy from a young newborn, they're not going to know it's still there. It takes time to develop the knowing that when something's out of sight, it still exists. It's still permanent. Right. And in the same way, our sense of self takes time to develop a sense of permanence. Like, I'm not going to be erased, wiped out, sent back into the void of non-existence. So what we need in order to develop a sense of self-permanence is actually to be held, preferably skin on skin, almost all the time as newborns. That's why in indigenous cultures, babies are just strapped to the mama's body all the time. And, now neonatal experts are calling this the 4th trimester, which is a funny way to put it, since trimester means 3. But
yeah, I have a real problem with that term because I can't get past the semantics. It's like super important and we should all be talking about it, and it's such a real thing, but I'm like, tri means 3, guys.
It really does. It really does.
3.
Tri means 3. No, it's a silly way to put it, but it makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Human infants are born before we're ready to be born. We are not ready for the world yet, but unfortunately our heads are too big that if we were to grow any longer in the womb, we would break our mother's bodies coming out during labor. So we have to come out, but we're not ready to come out. So we need to be constantly swaddled, constantly held skin on skin, and kept in like quiet spaces and dark space, in order to feel safe as newborns. And when we are smushed against another body, then we feel our skin, because our skin's being pressed on, and we feel our bones, we feel our skin, and all of a sudden we start to feel like, oh, I'm here, like a proprioceptive sense of existing. If we're not held in that way, because we're left alone too much, or maybe we're overstimulated, we never have the sense that we exist as a fact, that we matter, that we have matter. And so we forever feel at risk of falling apart, coming undone, falling off the face of the planet and flying through space with nothing to catch us. It's this very existential fear of disappearing. And this is when we develop what I call the frictive coping style, to deal with that sense of not feeling held together. And I made that word up, frictive. And what it means is we have to sort of like rub ourselves against everything all the time to create a friction that keeps us feeling tethered to this world, because otherwise we feel like we're falling. We feel like there's no there. And so that friction is accomplished by a lot of intensity. So the body's tense, the mind is always going, the schedule's completely full, there's no gaps, because we are terrified of the void. Any silence, any stillness, any in-between spaces feels like we're going to disappear or fall off the edge of the earth. So it's really important to hold our kids. Now, this is controversial as heck, so you can either cut this out or put 1,000 disclaimers around it. But what I've noticed is that what people are calling ADD and ADHD is the frictive coping style. And when I work with adults, and we heal their frictive wound, which we can do very, very quickly, they stop taking their ADD meds. because they finally feel contained. So if you have a kid who's exhibiting ADD symptoms, see what happens if you give them a time in and just squeeze them really tight for like 10 minutes a day. And you may find they no longer have those symptoms.
I have questions about that.
Bring it.
Is that when in the day that I just questions about the practicality of doing that with your child who's a little bit bigger and in that frantic energy often, is that something that you do at other times when they're peaceful? That's when you do the holding, like when they're available for that? Or do you feel like that's an intervention in the times when they're in the thing?
Sit on him. I mean, I'm kind of not kidding, especially if they're frictive, especially if they're like this little pig pen cloud of energy. Just be like, and sit on them. The more weight, the better. Now, don't crush their bones depending on their size. Sure. But like as an adult, one of the biggest interventions for frictive is, I would have an adult lie on a hard surface and have their spouse or friend lie full body on top of them, torso on torso, legs on legs, arms on arms, and give the full weight for 10 to 15 minutes. And it, Layne, have you done it?
To you.
Would you say?
Oh, I've done that to you.
To me, you sure have. Wait, has anyone ever done it to you?
I sometimes ask Sean to do that. I've never thought about it. And my son, my 4-year-old, he asks us to do it every night at bedtime. He wants either me or Sean to lay on him as we're doing the bedtime routine and just lay like our weight on him safely, obviously. Yeah. But he like loves it. And it's interesting to realize that that's doing something beyond just like a sweet snuggle.
No, it's
how interesting.
It's developing his existential sense of like, I exist as a fact.
Wow.
I'm not going to disappear.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. The other night he had both of us do it. My husband's 6'4" and big guy. And so we're like smushing this little guy and he's so happy. It was like his favorite thing. He's like, this reminds me today, I blah, blah, blah. And he's like chatting as if it's just very normal to have two grown people smushing you. But he loved it.
Incredible. Yeah. Also the fact that he knows he can ask for that. I mean,
I know.
Like, how beautiful.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. It's so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Cool. I'm going to ask for that more.
But then what's interesting about frictive, if I could just say one final thing is, we need all that containment and we need all that support, like really being held from underneath as a newborn and smushed. But all that grounding and all that support and all that smushing and containment is actually in service of us being able to let go and be spacious. So the actual antidote for frictive isn't contained or grounded or smushed, it's spacious. That when there's this dialectic between being supported and being safe to just fully let go and surrender. And so like when you were holding that baby and took them into the shade and they like felt asleep in your arms, it's because they felt so supported by your firm, loving arms that they could let go and go back into that space, that liminal space of sleep. And so when we're not frictive, when we're not that pig pen, because we're finally feeling safe and held, all this glorious emptiness starts to open up inside. That beautiful nothingness that is kind of our essence or source energy starts to fill us up. And there's just like this peace, this like buoyancy to our experience instead of all this jazz. It's very, very spacious and quiet in this beautiful way inside.
It's funny. It actually makes me think of my backyard. My backyard, there's a spot where people can come in and out and there's no door at all. And my kids don't like to be back there unless we block it or like there's a grown up. If it's blocked, they go and play and will play for a long time. But if it's open, they're like, we'll stay inside. And it's not much is changing. Nobody's coming in and out, but it's the feeling of like, either I'm safe or I'm not. And if I don't feel safe, I don't want to go relax in this beautiful spot.
Perfect segue to the next one. So you just mentioned that when that membrane or container is sealed, there's a sense of feeling safe.
Yeah.
And that is our next coping style called the omnipotent coping style. And this is an infant wound. This is when we don't develop that psychic skin or membrane that contains us. So frictive is about physical containment and omnipotent is about emotional containment. So when we're infants, we're working through a lot of feelings. Sometimes we feel great and sometimes we feel awful. And we need help metabolizing the moments that we don't feel good. We need our parent to be with us through that feeling and be contained to themselves and be able to empathize and hold with us that we're having a difficult feeling, and even to be able to mentalize or put words to our experience of, oh, you're feeling so frustrated right now, or you're feeling so hot right now, or you're feeling so tired right now, right? And we need them to not take it on themselves. And we also need them to trust that we're big enough to feel difficult things like, oh, it's okay that you don't feel okay right now. I know you're okay. But what can happen is a lot of times, if the parent doesn't have a psychic skin because they're omnipotent or symbiotic or whatever, when we as an infant freak out, the parent gets anxious, goes, oh no, my baby's upset, right? And then it's like this echo chamber of, as the infant, my upset becomes this amplified in this bigger upset, and it goes on and on forever and ever. And there's no perimeter to it. There's no yard blocked off where I end and the world begins. And so everything that is me. There's nothing that's not me. And this is a very terrifying feeling. There's nothing to contain my big feelings. And so what we end up doing if we're omnipotent is, because we don't know how to self-soothe and self-regulate and know that it's okay that we don't feel okay and it's just a feeling and it's inside. Instead, it feels bad, and then everything feels bad and everything turns bad. So it's like all potent, powerful means I'm going to try to control everything outside to get me feeling better inside. So as adults, we become very controlling, and any little thing out of place feels like it's going to devolve into chaos. And we're like, oh my God, why'd you put the salt shaker there? I keep the salt shaker over here, right? Because it's like we try to control our environment to regulate our own emotions, because we never learned we have a self or have emotions or have that psychic skin to protect us, so we don't feel safe. And so we become kind of these dominating, bossy tyrants ourselves in order to just try to keep ourselves alive and safe. We still feel like skinless infants inside, although we look like bossy fools outside.
But like, even if you're not, I mean, me too. And yet I'm like holding it together. Everybody thinks I'm all sweet and cute, but then the thing goes wrong and I'm like, I'm going to die for like a second, freak out. And then it comes back down.
Exactly.
Like, even if you can't see it on the outside.
So she's omnipotent. So if we're omnipotent, we're either held in because we have other coping styles like constricted, which she has, which keeps us held, or like me, I'm not held in, omnipotent, and I just go, what did you do? And I freak the fuck out, right? But either way, whether we're held in or not held in, within minutes, as soon as the thing's back in place or how we need it to be, we're like, fat, happy baby. We have total amnesia that there was ever a problem because we are babies, just as easily soothed as we are reactive, right? And then people are like, what? How could you be okay right now? Like, you just yelled at me. It's like, oh no, I was, it's fine.
Felt a feeling. Yeah.
I'm fine. A little embarrassed. Fine.
Omnipotent people suck. That's me. we're so confusing to others, because they're like, she's the nicest person. And then she gets really scary. And it's like, yeah, because she's really scared in that moment, when we're
so am I hearing this right? That like, even if you work through these coping styles, like they always come back, but you just have more awareness? Like, because I guess maybe what I'm wondering is, are we saying there is a person who's capable of parenting without all of these 12 things? Yeah. Or is that's an idealistic thing? It's mostly that we're just all aspiring to be free of these.
I think it's a little column A, a little column B. I think that it is possible for us to parent our children so that they don't develop these coping styles. I think it is possible for us as adults to liberate ourselves from these coping styles. And I also don't want to be like super absolutist. And so sometimes I like to say we go from these wounds possessing us to us possessing them. So, for example, let's say with my omnipotent coping style, I used to be so personally omnipotent that I couldn't even, if like reggae music was such a trigger for me, if I went into a space and reggae music was playing, I was like, turn it off, or get me the fuck out of here. Like, it was like intolerable.
Overwhelming. Yeah.
And because of the practices that I've used to recode myself and others have supported me, I've grown a psychic skin. So it's not like I'm white knuckling. If I hear reggae now, I'm not like, I'm okay. I can self-soothe. It's not like that. It's like, it doesn't bother me. It actually literally doesn't penetrate. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't even sound bad anymore. Like I don't even notice it. It doesn't, it's just, I'm not skinless anymore. I have skin now. Now, do I have my omnipotent moments where I get triggered now and then? Yes. I haven't fully healed that wound. But it's like night and day, like how much more chill and even keel and equanimous, how the hell you say that, I am now that I've healed this in me. And there are certain coping styles that I feel I've healed completely. And I've certainly walked hundreds of people through that process of liberating themselves from coping styles. And it just doesn't come back. Like, it's like, I'm good now. I'm not this way. Layne, have you had any experiences where you're like, oh, I think we resolved this one in me?
Like gone.
Or aspects of it, or how would you say it?
I would say I like how you've just described it. I feel like that does feel like my experience, where before it was the water, like that was the soup, and I was just like in it all the time. I didn't even know that I was like creating friction in my life to make sure that I'm like still here.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, maybe like 85%, I want to say, a lot of these, even like the really big ones where I'm like, oh, that's that thing. And like I see it come up in like little spaces where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm surprised that there's still a little bit of that in there because it feels so much better. I'm like, that's that thing. I know what to do about that. And not even in a like, I know how to manage that way, but in a like, oh, I know how to get more healed of that. Like I am confident that they will continue to fade because of the trajectory.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about source code is instead of working with the mind or concepts or like having to white knuckle or like actively do something, we work with shifting the energy and shifting the embodiment. Because when you've been stuck in a coping style your whole life, it's kind of like being in an invisible prison. You don't even know you're in a coping style. This is how I am. This is how life is. I'm just reactive, or I'm just shy, or I'm just feel like an alien because I am one. I'm really from another planet. Like this is how people think. And then when we liberate you in like just one coding session, or you take a 12-week intensive or whatever, what happens is you taste the new world, you taste the new embodiment, you feel it viscerally, and you feel like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to feel safe, which is the antidote to omnipotent. I feel safe. And you now forever have that energetic reference to return to. So even if you feel unsafe, you go, oh, wait. I remember what safe feels like. And you're right back in it. It becomes your new baseline. You know how to get right back to it. I think, yeah, that's how source code works.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I like the idea of reestablishing a baseline. So even like yesterday, I was at your house doing some work and weird things kept going wrong. And I told Connor, I feel like I'm at war with this day. And I was like, I know that I'm having this, like the whole first half of the day was like so omnipotent, but the underneath, I was like, it's kind of funny that I'm being like this, because I know that this isn't my thing, and this is gonna, like, I will return to baseline a little later. I'm not in control of this right at the moment. All I got to do is just like keep treating people well, even though I feel like I'm going to explode, and then return to baseline like later when I can. And so the tone of it is so different, rather than like believing, and oh my God, oh no, it's all over.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but for me, every day the sky was falling about literally everything when I was actually actively omnipotent. And now it's like every day is easy. And then, this one morning things got a little, push-pull in my quantum field, right? Right. This is that omnipotent feeling that I haven't had for the last several weeks or months, which is like so different than how it used to be.
Yeah.
Like I almost never feel that omnipotent feeling now. Which is bizarre because it was every minute of every day for me.
Yeah, it's kind of like how I've described, I think on this podcast, I've talked about depression and anxiety now, where like when they come, I'm almost like, oh, good to see you, because it lets me know like, oh, I haven't been feeling this whole time. And so they're almost like an old friend where I'm like, well, you can't stay the night, but it's lovely to see you. And
I know what you are now. You're not me.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. All right, let's giddy up. I almost feel like we should skip deprived for some reason. It's kind of
sure. I would love to get to at least one toddler one.
Yeah.
So maybe if we can like pick a couple.
I think we
make
could
sure that
talk
we get.
about both toddler wounds just because they're kind of like inverse of each other, even though you can have
Sure.
both. And I just want to clarify, I had all 12 coping styles, which is kind of what allowed me to, I think, be the conduit for the work. So no shame in the game of having any of them. I had all of them. Okay, so toddlerhood is such an interesting time of what we're needing and what we're going through, which is that toddlerhood is this in-between time between being a baby and a big kid. Before toddlerhood, as infants, we were just these passive little lumps of flesh that needed everything from our parents, total dependency. We could do absolutely nothing for ourselves. And toddlerhood is the first time that we're starting to gain a little bit of independence and a little bit of separateness of like, I can toddle away from the safe base of my caregiver and try things on my own for the first time. I can put a spoon in my mouth and feed myself. I can learn how to get up on a chair by myself. I can go over and put these, blocks away in their bin. Like, wow, stuff is happening for me. I'm gaining this independence, right? And so it's really a time of exploring both our bigness and our smallness of like, yes, I can put the blocks away, but sometimes I might drop it on my toe and need to run back to the safe base of mommy and cry and be held and maybe even breastfed. We're still kind of, some of us breastfeeding that time. We're still developing our teeth at that time. We're still babies, but we're also playing with being a big kid. And what we need during this time, psychologist Margaret Mahler called it the rapprochement phase. And rapprochement means a reckoning, and it's a reckoning between our bigness and our smallness. What we need during that time is to be allowed to 100% be both. Totally acknowledged for our bigness. Oh my gosh, big boy, you just put those blocks away all by yourself. Wow, my big boy. And totally acknowledged for our smallness. Oh, your toe hurts so bad. My baby needs holding and soothing and feeding. Oh, my baby. They need to be honored and held and recognized for both the bigness and the smallness. And what can go wrong during this phase is we can either be not allowed to be big or not allowed to be small, or both. So you can have both of these wounds. Not allowed to be big means our parent doesn't want us to toddle away. No, be careful. Oh, you can't do it on your, or they take over. No, you don't stack the blocks that way. You stack them this way, my way, right? That the parent is so controlling and so in need to be in control all the time and the boss of things, that the child never develops their own sense of agency, autonomy, the ability to do things their own way, be different, say no. It's always got to be the parent's way. And this creates what I call the symbiotic coping style. And we were talking about that a little bit earlier. But we learned that the outside thing, the parent, is the big thing, the scary thing, the thing that blows up and rages because they're omnipotent. And we have to just do what they say and go with their flow and try to never upset them. So as adults, we're people pleasers. And we never want to say no, we never want to disagree, and we always just want to go with the flow. On the opposite side, if we're never allowed to be small, what can happen is when a baby becomes a toddler, especially if the parent is overwhelmed with other stuff, a parent can misidentify this exploration of new little bits of independence for real maturity of like, okay, you're a big kid now, you can take care of yourself. Or you can help me take care of your younger sibling that is born when you're 1.5 to 3 years old as a toddler. So oftentimes if we have a younger sibling that's a year to 3 years younger than us, we develop what's called the premature coping style, which is we're not ready for real maturity yet. We're still half baby, but we're forced into this faux maturity of like, all right, now that you can walk and talk and you're a precocious little thing, I'm going to expect you to take care of yourself, never be a baby anymore, and even help me with your little sibling. You're a big boy now. You're a big brother. You're a good big brother. You don't need me in that special way anymore. They do. Or maybe I need you to help out with me if I'm not well as a parent or someone else in the family. And so when we need our toddler to not have needs, they develop what I call the premature coping style, where they feel like they have to buck up and be the big boy or big girl and give and not receive and not need. And what ends up happening as adults is we're the overgivers, the overdoers, the overachievers, and we're spent. And we never think it's okay to nourish ourselves, or we're not allowed to rest. We're not allowed to need. We're certainly not allowed to feed. Almost all eating disorders come from the premature coping style. I shouldn't need, I shouldn't feed. I'm too much. I don't want to be too much. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to take in anything. My role is only to put things out, never take things in. So those are the two coping styles that can come out of the toddler experience.
Wow, that's so profound. It makes so much sense.
It makes so much sense. I feel like those toddler ones are the ones that make the most just like to the left brain, like, oh, I see that. That makes, I get it.
Yeah. Wow.
Makes sense.
And then when it comes to shifting it, if someone's listening and they're like, oh, I see myself in either one, it seems like either one could really happen. Is there, you said like you can simply and quickly start shifting things back. Would it just be acting in the opposite? Like say you have, so I have an 8-year-old. If I was looking at my 8-year-old and going, oh, wow, I didn't let her grow. Would I then now be like, you're growing. I'm so happy. Like, is that it?
Yeah. Okay. So I thought you were asking if you identify as these, how do you shift it? But you're asking if you see the signs of
you're
this in your children.
Parent and you're seeing, because I feel like it's so common because we're like sad to watch them grow. So we're like, stay little. I hear people say it to my kids. Oh, stay little, don't grow. They're just being cute and funny. But it sounds like, no, we want to give them the freedom, like encouragement, grow.
Yeah.
This is so great.
Great. Yeah. So I think that just spotting the symbiotic coping style in your kids is hard. The same way it's hard to spot it in your clients, because basically they're just the easy child, the dream child, the child who's so easy. And you're just like, I just have a good kid. I just have a genuinely good, easy kid. And it's like, no, you don't. You have a symbiotic toddler, a symbiotic child.
Well, you got a regular person.
You've got a regular person who's just making your life easy at the sacrifice of their own agency and agenda. And so if you have a kid that just goes with the flow and is so easy, you really want to encourage them to be difficult, to say no. No, but what do you want, honey? What do you want today? And like, it's okay to say no to me. Like, you don't want to do this? Like, let me know your no. I want to know your no. And if we see our kid is like that, we really need to look inside and check our own controllingness, our own temper, because a kid who's that well behaved is probably a little bit afraid of us. Not to throw shade here, but we just need to really take a good hard look in the mirror and go, am I a little bit scary? And I would be the first to raise my hand. Sometimes I can be scary, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm scared, I get scary. And it's like, wow, if my kid is a little scared of me, no wonder they act so pleasant all the time. And maybe even trying to repair that rupture of like, gosh, mommy gets angry sometimes. What's it like for you when mommy gets angry? How does it feel inside? And what if you could get angry? Now, one of the antidotes to coming out of symbiotic is what this thing I create called wall work, where you push on a wall and you rage because you're reactivating your healthy animal instincts towards aggression, which as symbiotic individuals, we essentially have the same inhibition mechanisms around our aggression that beta pack animals do. And so when we reactivate right, we override those inhibitions and we reawaken that part of ourselves that can be alpha. And so it could be really helpful with your kids too, to be like, are you ready to get angry? Get angry with me, and have them even push on your hands and be like, let's make animal noises, like, and help them awaken that healthy, aggressive impulse to protect themselves, to want what they want, to insert themselves, because symbiotic people are essentially missing that phallic, whether we're masculine or feminine, it doesn't matter, that phallic, insertive, powerful, our oomph, our sort of testosterone-y energy. So you want to help them integrate that part of themselves that can be firm and take shape and want what they want and say no and be separate.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool.
Can we do kind of this same conversation around the premature? Because one of the number one things that people ask us about is like, everybody knows that they have a toddler and that their baby is coming, and they all know like, this is a thing. It's coming. There's just like a lot of that feeling around that, and everybody wants to get that right. Nobody wants their older baby, their first baby, the one that they can see right now. They're like, how do I not leave this baby? There's a real outcry for that.
I think it's really important to not do the thing of being like, you're a big girl and you're a big sister. Like, that like really rewarding that is kind of manipulative, and it makes them feel like the only part of them that's good or acceptable is the big part, the part that can get big and take care of others. And so just really being like, you're my baby, and this is also my baby, right? Like you're still my baby, and making sure that there's like that time in of like, all this feeding and holding is going on here with the newborn. Let me make sure you and I also get our feeding and holding time, like our really tender, nurturing, like holding and stroking the face and being like, you're my baby, baby, baby too. And making sure that there's like optimal indulgence of the baby part of a toddler is half baby. And of course, we want to also indulge and encourage their newfound independence and bigness of like, when they want to be big, when they're like, and I am big and strong, be like, yeah, you're so big and strong. But if they're like, oh, mommy, be like, oh, baby, 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 come here, my baby. Really got to give them that feeling that they are still a baby, because they are, that they don't have to somehow hide or pretend that they're not a baby anymore just because there's also a newborn baby on the scene. And again, it's never going to be even. The newborn, again, like we were saying with the frictive, needs constant holding. It's not going to be even, but even just 5 minutes a day of holding and indulging, it's like, now it's our baby time. Come get on my lap. Let me rock you. Let me hold you. Let me touch your face. Let me call you my baby, baby, baby. We've really got to help them feel that part of them that can depend on others is a beautiful, healthy, meetable part of them, that their need is not too big, that it's absolutely meetable, and that it's a beautiful part of them. They don't have to hide that baby part inside and become freaking anorexic, literally or emotionally. But that we love that part of them that's hungry for us, even though there's another baby that's hungry for us all day too.
I love that, because a lot of the times toddlers will physically act out that ask. They will put the binky in their mouth. They will lay down and pretend to be a baby in that time period where there's a baby. And people are like, is this weird? Because it looks so weird.
Yeah.
But like they're literally asking you for exactly what they want.
And you need to play with them, like play like, oh, is it baby time? Oh, you're the baby now? Let's wrap you in your blankie and you've got your binky, and like let them have that play time where they're reintegrating. Okay, I'm still allowed to need here.
Okay.
So yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, my son, I remember he would want to be swaddled, like baby was born. And so we would just swaddle him on the couch with his little thing. He'd have like toast in hand, remove the pacifier to eat his toast, and then put it back and tuck his arms back in his swaddle. It's like this big little guy.
First of all,
but
obviously
it's
you
cool
are
to
very
realize
good
that
enough,
something,
Mom.
Oh, well, thank you. It's just, it's really meaningful to know there's something beyond it. Cause like in the moment you're just like, oh, okay, well, if doing this is going to make you cozy for a second while I feed your sister, like, sure, of course. But understanding like, oh, it's so much bigger than that. They just want to know their position with you still. And it makes me want to go to my oldest too and make sure that even though she's 8, like she gets some time to be the baby, because she naturally, I mean, she's a very good big sister. She loves to care for the little ones and she does a great job. But just understanding like, oh, it's going to be really meaningful to her too, that she still has these moments of like, you get to be the baby too. Yeah, this is really good. This is important.
That makes me so happy, because then she won't have to grow up and be premature.
Right, right.
Yeah, and the thing in not doing the like you're a big sister now thing is not to take away. I think a lot of what people think they're doing is trying to foster connection. They're like, I want the connection between these two siblings. And that part is the good part. Like, of course, then absolutely, like we want this connection between, we want the sisterness. It's the bigness that we're watching out for.
Sure.
Yeah. And we don't want to
I
be
think
like,
also
and
maybe
you're the other
they're
caregiver
celebrating.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm the mommy to the newborn, and I'm also still your mommy. And I'm the mommy here. You don't have to be the mommy.
Yeah.
Because toddlers shouldn't have to be mommies.
Right. That's so cool.
Oh God, I love you guys. I have so many chills.
Thanks for doing this. This is so meaningful.
It's feeling so good.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could do this all day with y'all.
Me too. Me too. And in
we
fact,
can.
let's check our time.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Actually, great point, Sam, because we could do this all day. But we're at our hour. So
How
there
can people come and do more of this?
Yeah.
They'll want it.
Hell yes.
I'm going to link your quiz in the show notes so people will like have your website and be able to follow you and be able to like take the coping styles quiz. But on top of that, like what is the most direct place you'd like people to come find you?
Ooh, well, do you know when this is going to air?
Probably Tuesday.
Oh,
It's coming to really
wow.
soon.
I have some things backstocked, but I think I'm going to just.
Oh, this is
Pop us
rad. Oh,
forward.
this is so rad. Okay. Yeah. If any of you are into this and you're like, I want this map for parenting because it's so helpful, we've got a class starting September 12th.
Oh my God.
So
Perfect.
it's called the 12-week Coping Styles Intensive. And in this class, you will learn in detail about every single coping style, how it gets formed in childhood, what it looks like in you and as an adult, what it looks like in your kids, how to parent differently, how to reparent ourselves, how to emerge from them. It's like this radical, Layne did it and change. That's where your life changed, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So come on in. The water's fine.
Amazing. The water's so good. That's perfect. Perfect
Come
timing.
with us.
We'll air it, and then a month away, they can join you for more of this.
That's so exciting.
Thanks.
Oh, I would love
Awesome.
to reach your audience. I bet they're the best.
They are
the best.
They're really great. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been so helpful to me in my parenting journey, but I also am excited for everybody to listen, and it's going to help us all.
Going to help
Thanks
us all.
for arranging
And
that.
that was
it's my
5
pleasure.
of the 12.
Wow.
Right.
We've definitely got another episode coming in hot.
Yeah,
Oh my
girl.
gosh, please.
Absolutely.
I would love it.
Oh my gosh, I love you both so much. It's such a joy
Thank
to me to like
you.
see everybody's faces
I know
all
this is
together
so
on my
cool.
screen.
Yeah, thank you. This was so helpful, and I'm glad it's only 5 because I've got my work cut out for me right now. So we'll do some work and then come back and do some work.
Yes, and then you can report on what
Yeah.
happened. Did they
Yeah,
change?
yeah.
You know, I bet you're gonna be like, whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome.
Okay,
Cool.
amazing. Thank you, Sam.
Okay, thank
Love
Beautiful
you.
rest of your morning.
Have a great day.
Bye, you guys.
Okay, friends. Wow, that was a lot.
That was
It's a lot. It's so much. It's so much, and it's so exciting. It also, like several of the conversations we've been having, where it's like new paradigm, so much new information can feel daunting in a way, just because it's like all so new and so big. But then also like the promise is very big of like I felt the same way with like the nutrition episode of like you can feel better, and it just feels so good and exciting to be like I can feel better. But it also, I know from
It's a
being at the
process.
beginning, can be like this is a lot to synthesize.
Sure.
So today, I just want you guys to let all that like sort of wash over you, and then focus on the part about like the needs, where we got to learn like what these developmental needs are, and you can focus that on your children. But then also when you feel these, like if you heard about some of these like coping styles, you heard yourself in them, it can feel like, well, how do I get this out?
So many.
Yeah,
of them.
well,
yeah.
I'm in all of them. All the
Yeah.
ones that she described are
Sure.
this
Yeah.
guy.
And she said she had all 12. So like
Yeah.
relatable.
Super relatable and super innocent and super calm. I feel like a note of calm. Sometimes when we hear about ways that things can go awry, whether that's like from psychology or from a medical standpoint or whatever, it can feel like, oh no, I'm ruining my child.
Sure.
If you do nothing, it's normal.
Yeah.
Right. All we're talking about here is like ways that we can build up or heal up from normal.
Sure.
It's not like, oh no, I'm doing something crazy. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you're doing the norm. And actually like there could be ways that we could build forward, and that could be really cool. So I hope that that's calming. But also if you see yourself in this conversation, like take a second to be like, oh yeah, this thing comes up in me because I was once a baby and I needed some things, and some people tried really hard and they got it right sometimes and they didn't some other ways. And this is just one of the ways that I got missed as a little baby.
Yeah.
And that's why it feels so all consuming, right? Because it's that super early experience. And just let it be a moment of like self-compassion and thinking about like, okay, I feel what that feeling is probably disconnected. I need to go seek out some connection and keep trying until the other person who loves me gets it right. You know, just like, I hope that you can use this both directions of like, this is how I'm going to be toward my child. And when I feel the thing come up in myself, be like, okay, it's the same need. It's all just people stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm a person, they're a person, and I get to have compassion, and I know how to adjust my care of this little baby person so that hopefully I can hit that need. Because now I know.
Yeah. Last night I went home after laying on all my kids. I also had a conversation with Eloise, and I was like, hey, I know I get mad sometimes at night at bedtime, and that's probably scary. Because there was that one piece where she was like, you know, you don't want your kid to be scared of you. But then I was kind of wrestling with something I struggle with is just anger in general, which I think was the symbiotic. Was that the one? There was something about like where you don't feel like you can express anger. But then sometimes that can come if you have a parent figure who is like overly aggressive, then you become this.
Yeah.
But then anyway, it turned into a really cool little moment with me and Eloise of her being like, oh, I mean, but I yell too. And then me being like, good thing you do.
Yeah.
Like, that's good. And then Sean being like, oh, I yell too. Like, sorry for the times, you know, like we don't want to scare each other, but we also don't want anger to be washed out of this dynamic because it's part of the human experience. Right. So, I don't know. So just nothing like super profound, but just this back to you guys, like immediately listening, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that bedtime anger thing. And so then I just all night was like, okay, how can I try to keep myself regulated, make my needs known, and then also be really clear with my kids. We need to get serious about doing bedtime when bedtime is happening because this is crazy because my kids are professionals at extending bedtime way into the night. Anyway, so yeah. It's real life stuff.
So special.
Yeah.
Because we're all in it, right? We're all like in this world of being people and having needs and getting those met and then not getting those met. And it's just like, oh, it's so regular.
Yes.
And there's something so beautiful about being like, I'm normal and my kids are normal. And we're all just going to be really human about this.
Yeah.
Really
and
gracious.
We're not going to aim for
humanness.
Perfection. We're just going to do very good enough job.
Yes. So if you guys want any more Dr. Sam or source code, I'm going to put a couple of links in the show notes, one to the course that she mentioned. But the one that I think is going to be really more like the most accessible for you all is she developed this quiz. So you can go in there and just like take it and find out what your top coping style is. And then there's like a little bit of content that you can explore at kind of a low price point about like those particular coping styles. If that's something that like really lit you up and you're like, oh, I really want to learn about that. Cool. I feel like that's like a very easy on-ramp. So that link is in the show notes as well. And if this is exciting for you guys and you have questions and things, just like send them in so that we can know like if this is a really interesting topic for you and we can dialogue about it and we could have Sam back later.
And also we can process it together on the 4th Tuesday of the month at noon our time. We're in California, Western time. Oh, no, Pacific Standard Time. Is there something called Western time? Oh,
I don't know.
Great. Anyway, we have these conversations with you guys, whoever shows up to those Zoom calls. And if you want to process this more, we can. And Layne is an excellent resource. You're just well-versed in all of this Dr. Sam stuff. So we can talk more. Okay?
Okay. Love you guys. Have a great week.
Okay. Bye.